when our kids were little, you could grab them by the, grab them by the neck, not really. I mean, you could lead them around by their collar, make them do exactly what you wanted them to do, and they looked perfect, and our kids were all combed and perfect, and I'm thinking, you know what, we're pretty good parents. We got this figured out. And people who have their kids who are like not doing well, they just don't have it figured out until you get to that point where I don't have it figured out, and your kids are doing things that you didn't expect, and but then you talk to others, and you're like, this is our story, this is what's going on with our kids, and they're like, yeah, us too.
We built this in February, my dad and I. These were just words that were inside jokes.
Get him, all get him. Pick it up.
Adrenaline rush.
You're looking around and your neighbor, whoever you're with, they start kind of moving away from you a little.
I am so utterly and eternally grateful that I had a daughter first, because God gave me that which I needed, not that which what I thought I wanted. I think the thing that's particularly special about being a father to a daughter is the opportunity that we have and the burden and the responsibility that we have to protect them. Women are strong, but they're also more vulnerable.
I appreciate what you said about wanting to protect your girls. When you hold those girls in your arm for the first time, I mean, you never want anything to harm them or hurt them. But then how do you protect them when they don't want to be protected?
Yeah.
I think that's been the hardest part for me, is to know as a dad, I want to protect these girls, but they don't want to be protected, and so you have to kind of let them go. It's painful. You come to the point after talking and arguing, you understand that at some point, okay, this is in God's hands. It's no longer in mine. I can no longer parent these girls like I want to parent them. I can't protect them because they don't want to be protected. And so there is some freedom in that, because as a dad, I want control, and I want to be able to help them as much as I can, but knowing that you can't, it kind of takes the pressure off.
John, in that process, which is similar to what I experienced with Devin, as I shared with you last night, when she wanted to be married to Dan and I wasn't in favor of it. In that process, did you ever find moments where you, in either frustration, anger, or just simply not knowing what to do, you reached some stage where you almost were walking away, kind of giving her over, in a sense?
Oh, a lot. And there were times when it both my wife and I felt like we only were doing well when we forgot that we had kids. That might sound awful, but it's so painful to have your kids walk through seasons that that you promised that you would protect them from.
Yes.
And sometimes you just find peace only when you could just like forget about that situation. Yes. You pray, and then you just try to forget. But
I don't have kids, so I don't know how it all works, but I can only imagine that having children, like you are in control, like you're their parent, so you make decisions for them up to a certain point. And so I think my parents were fairly controlling, and I'm not saying that that's a negative thing, but like they were very involved in my life and were kind of the ultimate decision makers. And so as I got older, that was a little like more foggy, like how do they navigate what to control and what not to? And so I would say that it was hard as I got to be more independent, but I was also pretty young as well, and so that was confusing. But I would say sometimes I felt like they really wanted more control than what they truly could control, and so that was hard because it was like sorry, I know you would like to control this, but in reality, it's just not. It's not possible with what stage of life I'm in. And they raised me to be also really independent and make my own decisions. And so that was always at tension, which I think is good, but it was also kind of like, okay, how do we handle both of these truths at the same time?
Dad's been my best friend since I was a baby, and my mom's always been like enemy, like butting heads, always arguing, very similar personalities. So I didn't really feel controlled by my parents because I think they knew that they couldn't control me because I'm a very stubborn, independent person that will do whatever I want, and did whatever I want, and was kind of like, screw you, I don't give a crap about your opinion on this. I'm gonna do what I want to do because it's justified in my head. But I don't know, like, no, there wasn't that control, but or fear, I guess. There was no fear of that either, because I kind of knew in the back of my mind, it's like, regardless of what I do, my parents still have to love me.
Seeing my dad had very little part of my decisions, and we just didn't have that relationship. So it was way more with my mom helping me decide or deciding for me or whatever. So that wasn't really in the picture too much for me as far as dad's thoughts about what I wanted to do or not. I had more anger and frustration toward him because I felt like he wasn't part of my personal life. Like, that was something I desired. And now that I'm an adult and know more about the situation and what he's going through, I understand that better. But at the time, I didn't know those things, and I was just really hurt. In college, I was like, so, there was a point where I was like so just frustrated and sad and even angry about this situation, and God used my dorm dad to really start coming alongside and helping me see things in a different way, and then just deciding it doesn't really matter what my dad does or what he did or didn't do. I need to be responsible for my part of the relationship, and I don't want to live this way. It's not very life-giving, and it's heavy and it's hurtful, and I don't want to look back and see like I lived my whole life in this sour kind of place. So really just trying to ask God to heal, those places, and to show me what I needed to do for my part, to like, okay, Dad's responsible for him, but I can change my side of it.
It takes tremendous faith just to turn them over to God, like you were saying, John.
Well, for us, it was just a process. I mean, believe me, I lacked faith all along the way. I was like, at some point you get a little upset. We did everything right, and this is how it turned out. And yes, you come to that point where you're like, we've done what we can. Now it's really up to God. But as far as it being faith, I was pretty lacking in faith for a lot of years.
To be clear, I was too, and perhaps what I should have said is that to come to the place that you did ultimately took faith. That God built your faith.
Well, God brought us to that point. That's for sure. Yes, there was a circumstance where, a long time ago, where Molly was on a mission trip down to California with her church, and she had to have a job to stay. And come to the last 2 days before she was going to send her back because she didn't have a job. And I'm just praying, and she told me, and she found a job, and I'm crying on the garden. I'm an emotional guy. And then at that point I said, God, I will never doubt you again. Then Molly goes down, and I'm doubting God again. And it's just, it's the nature of me, is I really lack faith a lot, but God is faithful. And that was a huge faith builder for us, was to have Molly say, Papa, I want to come home.
Is it possible that, this is getting a little theological, but is it possible that God allows these situations in our life, no matter how painful they are, to build our faith and to grow us into the likeness and image of His Son?
I'm totally sure.
That's why we resist it so much right at the beginning. I don't want to take up my cross, especially when it pertains to my daughter.
Well, I woke up the other morning, this is like a couple weeks ago, I woke up and I thought, the reason I want my kids to do better is I want them to do better, but I want to stop hurting. And it was a revelation to me. It was like, oh, this isn't really as altruistic as I thought. I want my daughters to do, well and whatever, but it's really a lot about me and the pain I feel.
What role has control or fear played in your fathering of your daughter?
None whatsoever. None.
Rod, yeah, I guess you're the only one that struggled with that.
Go ahead.
Well, I had fears of not being able to provide for them. I hadn't really realized it until later that was a real fear of mine, because my dad was a construction worker. Sometimes he was busy, sometimes we were starving, and I didn't want that. I wanted to have a steady job,
What do you think your kids would say about you providing?
Well, Katie talked about the other day, and she says, I know you provided for me, and I knew you loved me, but not because you were there,
Interesting how past needs that weren't satisfied or things we went out without, whether it's emotional support, love from our parents or financial support even, how it motivates us, but sometimes that motivation goes too far.
I think sometimes kids don't realize that their parents are people. That they have their own hurts and desires and needs and desires to help them, but I think they just look at them as parents. These are people that I just have to either get through or obey or tolerate until I can get out, without realizing that these are people that have feelings and hearts and I think that.
But it is coming around to that now that we're a little older.
Yeah, that really, you're right. It comes around. Dad did this because of this. I appreciate it for that.